This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome back to another episode of the Less is More Sports podcast. Matt and I have a very special episode in store for you all today. But before we get involved into the main topic, one of the biggest news stories, if any story is bigger than the fact that the Rams and Bengals are playing against each other in Super Bowl 56, it is that the greatest quarterback that has ever played the game, Tom Brady, has officially decided to call it a career. After 22 seasons, Tom Brady has won 7 Super Bowls, 10 conference titles, 35 playoff wins, 15-time Pro Bowler, a 3-time MVP, and the leader in all-time touchdown passes and passing yardage. Matt, I know being a Colts fan, this is kind of like a bittersweet moment for both of us. So what were your thoughts when you finally got the news?
When I first heard it or when it was actually official, because it depends.
Well, when it was official. Definitely official.
Well, a little bit of relief because I thought that Tom Brady was going to be so pissed off at Adam Schefter that he was going to come back and play another year just to make everyone look stupid. But far be it from me. I mean, it kind of just seemed like it was the right time. And Les, we talked a little bit about this in our last playoff NFL episode. This seems like a weird page for Brady to end on because he lost. But in a way, maybe that loss was the way of the world telling him it's time to move on. Because that was the typical Tom Brady comeback game where everything bounces his way, but it didn't happen. There were weird penalties on his team. His team lost composure. And instead of him leading the game-winning drive, it was Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, which is a position that Tom Brady's usually in. So I feel like maybe that's the perfect bookend to his career. Maybe not a Super Bowl championship. He's already got 7. He didn't need 8. I'm sorry, Tom Brady fans, you can come at me. But it just seems like the strangest and yet most poetic way for Tom Brady to go out, his final game to be Tom Brady getting Tom Brady'd in a way. And when I was finally official, the only thing you can really think of, other than the great memes from the NFL account saying, goodbye, good riddance, was just like how the generation we grew up on is officially over. We're officially old men. Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, Drew Brees, Big Ben, Tom Brady, they're gone. Now the NFL's got a bright future, don't get me wrong. We've seen that throughout these playoffs, but to a guy who grew up watching those guys and Tom Brady, being the epic Darth Vader villain of the entire NFL in the 2000s to 2010s, it certainly is bittersweet because not only do you feel kind of bad because he was always the guy who was whomping your team and going to the Super Bowl, it's just like the official goalpost to like a season in life has come. Like we've lived through a great generation of Hall of Fame quarterbacks and there's more to come, but you just kind of feel old. You feel like, wow, I had the greatest career of all time, and I was around for it. And not only Tom Brady's career was great, everyone's career was great. And now it's over. And you just kind of feel like a hole because there's no one to hate now. There's no one to root against. There's no one to root for. You're just kind of a nomad now. And you've watched the world change so much in 5 years, and now it feels like it's changed even more. And I know this is awfully poetic to say about football and sports and the nature of life, but it really does feel like, for me especially, like a chapter of history. Sports history officially closes when Tom Brady hangs it up.
I agree with everything you just said. And, when I evaluate Tom Brady's career, from at least my fanhood, I can't help but to think of that scene from Anchorman where Vince Vaughn is looking over Ron Burgundy getting out of the bear enclosure, where he grabs him and says, with every ounce of me, I hate you. But gosh darn it, do I respect you. And that's exactly how I feel about Tom Brady, because even though like growing up a Colts fan, I was always Team Manning. We always had to get, the Patriots were always getting in our way on our way to a Super Bowl. And I hated him. There's just no other way to say it. I hated him, but I recognized how great of a career he had, how great he was as a quarterback. And I can't help but to respect. Game respects game. And that's just all there is to it. And, for the longest time, I was always one to say Peyton was better up until last several years. I even had them 1A, 1B for a while. But, what Brady continued to do, where Peyton would retire, and what Brady continued to do even after Peyton retired was just unmatched. And I don't think as good of a quarterbacks as we have nowadays, with Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, et cetera, I don't think we're ever going to see a quarterback dominate football the way Tom Brady did. It's unheard of. I mean, I'm reading, Players Tribune article right now, and then they kind of take the words right out of my mouth. I mean, you take away the 7 Super Bowls, the fact that he's got 10 conference championship wins is just stupid alone. And then you add everything else. And then the fact that what made Tom Brady special, and we all know the story, obviously was not a very highly touted recruit, not a very highly touted NFL prospect. And, we all know the story, drafted in the 6th round, pick 199. The Brady 6 is a very popular documentary that was shown on ESPN. But what made him special is that he just has a chip on his shoulder that is larger than anything we've ever seen. And just his his competitiveness is unmatched. We talk about Kobe and his work ethic, or Jordan and his competitiveness, but none of them match what Tom had, in my opinion. Tom, he had a knack for just finding the smallest thing or the smallest blemish that you could knock against him, and then he holds it against you and then wins on his way to winning another Super Bowl. It's almost like, as much as a Colts fan, we wanted the Patriots to get punished for the Deflategate scandal, we almost knew that once he got back, he's going to be like, okay, watch, I didn't have to deflate footballs. I'm going to win another Super Bowl. Joke's on you guys. And he did. So, I mean, it's the competitiveness, that chip on his shoulder, I don't know what you want to call it, that absolute dog mentality that he has is what made him special. And I can't stress enough, this is absolutely killing me to say all of this about him, but it's the truth. And I do not think we'll ever see. And I also want to say this, though. Here's the part of Tom Brady's career that nobody is talking about. You think of how much he's changed scouts evaluating quarterback prospects. Because after the greatest quarterback that's ever lived slipped to the 6th round, scouts are going to do whatever it takes to make sure that never happens again. That teams, they take more of a pride in the mental aspect and the mentality of each prospect. And they want to figure out everything they can before they draft a quarterback, because they don't want anything like this to happen. Obviously, you still get late round steals and everything like that. But for the greatest in the history of the sport to slip that far down, scouts want to make sure that never happens again. And I think that's the accomplishment that Brady the accomplishment that we don't talk enough about with Tom Brady.
Yeah, and that's totally a valid point. And I mean, it's like you said, we'll never see anything like this again. As much as we were saying, and we still do to an extent, as much as Patrick Mahomes is baby goat, and how the Chiefs are like the heir apparent, they're still 2-2 in championship games, and Tom Brady has won at least 10, and I don't even know how many he's lost. Tom Brady has more playoff wins than so he's 10-4. Mm-hmm. He's already 10-4 in conference championships. He could have 10 Super Bowl rings. He's got more playoff wins than all but one franchise, a singular human being who had already made his resume to go out and get jobs because he didn't think he was getting drafted. And now we're talking about how there's never going to be anybody like that again. And there probably won't be. This is kind of like I don't even want to say that. It's not even like a Jordan moment where we're going to debate LeBron and Jordan for a long time. Until somebody comes out and wins 8 or 7 Super Bowls, it's not even going to be close. And, people want to argue about Joe Montana and stuff like that. I never saw Joe Montana play. Joe Montana has been a spokesperson for, I don't know, Wheaties and Burger King more than he's been a quarterback in my lifetime. And I admit that. But still, if you just watching Tom Brady, especially in the later years where he became a little bit more human, he wasn't like this pretty boy who was evil towards the latter part of his career. And you're watching, and the more he gets humanized and the more you watch him, it's like, this guy really is the greatest to ever do this. that he's filming like a TED 2. And then he still goes out the next day and throws 5 touchdowns against a pretty good team. I mean, there aren't enough words, I don't think, they can describe how much you loathe and love someone like that. So the bottom line is it's the greatest career we've ever seen. He's the greatest quarterback of all time, statistically and ring wise. There aren't a lot of athletes in their sport who can say that. And it's just amazing. And point number two, can you imagine the Hall of Fame class in like 5 years? You got Tom Brady, you've got Roethlisberger. I'm assuming Gronk's probably going to retire. I would assume that without his buddy, unless he gets that USAA membership. I assume he's going to retire too. You've already got 3 there. Who knows what's going to happen after the Super Bowl? That's going to be like that basketball Hall of Fame class with like Jordan and I forget who else. But you remember that one year it was like everybody in there, all of the greats of the 90s got in all at once. It's going to feel like that again, whether or not Peyton Manning's there or not. So, yeah, just a great career. And there's a lot of envy and a lot of jealousy, but the bottom line is the guy's the GOAT. That's the bottom line.
So that brings me to my next question for you, Matt. You say it's the greatest career ever. Are you saying is that the greatest career of any athlete or most dominant resume of any athlete?
I mean, I'm trying to think if there's anybody who could challenge for that. Yeah, I'm going to stick with it because even when you look at guys who have a lot of rings, Bill Russell's got 11 championships. It's the most of any pro athlete. But the guy, yeah, I don't think he's a great player. Don't get me wrong. He's an all-time player. But I don't think anyone would say he's as good as Michael Jordan or LeBron James or even like a Kareem or a Shaq.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that's blasphemous to say that?
Not at
Bill
all.
Russell, he's a civil rights innovator. He's a great man. He's a college champion. He's an 11-time NBA champion. But the statistics just aren't there to put him in like the great conversation.
Nor was the competition. The competition wasn't there either.
Yeah. Then that's something that, comparing basketball is hard sometimes because of just how drastically the game has changed. Then you think about baseball, it's like, Babe Ruth has the same issue. He didn't play against like the greatest competition. Derek Jeter, for as many rings as he has and 3,000 hits, he's not considered the GOAT because of like his home run totals. Tom Brady has everything. He's got yardage, he's got rings, he's got touchdowns, he's got, you name it, the record, it's probably Tom Brady's. And he's also got the most rings and playoff wins of literally anybody. So he's got both. So you got to say it's arguably the greatest career of all time because even Muhammad Ali in his prime got beat. Tom Brady did get beat, but he always got right back up and won another Super Bowl. So I think, yeah, I don't really know how you can make an argument saying he's not. Because like I said, he's just the perfect match of championships, winning when it matters, and statistics to back it up. And granted, that's from playing a long career. But you got to remember, 2007, how many touchdowns did he have? 50?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like this is all just like towards the end of his career, he's padding stats. He was always good. And I don't really think you could say that about many other guys or many other athletes, period.
When determining who the best athlete is of all time, I always figured you should separate it between individual athletes and then team sport athletes. When it comes to team sport athletes, yes, Tom has the best resume of all time for all the reasons. Yeah, for all the reasons that you just mentioned. But when I talk about, when I look at individual athletes, I always say Michael Phelps was the most dominant for me. I mean, 25, 26 gold medals, enough said. With Serena Williams as a close second right behind him, just a remarkable career that she's had on the tennis court. So